Hello, everyone. I feel so happy to be here today. It's such an honor, and it represents a lot to me. It's really hard to put in 20 minutes or less than that, 4 years journey, because what I tried to do in my thesis was to put everything that I have researched for 4 years. It's not to teach you about all of that, but maybe to inspire you on some of this stuff that I believe so deeply, and that I believe that science can merge and create a better world. What I want to talk today is about happiness and how happiness can really change society. We know a lot nowadays about happiness. Positive psychology have researched that for more than 20 years. I will make the argument that if everyone understood the roots of happiness, we can transform a lot of things in society. So first of all, what is happiness? So happiness is not an emotion that fades away, that stays just for a second. It's a way of life. It's a feeling that we can cultivate throughout our journey on this planet. Happiness is a synonym of peace, of contentment, satisfaction, well-being, and even emotional intelligence, since it includes times of grief and sadness. Whenever we are sad, we can cultivate the happiness. We can understand we are sad because of that, but we still realize all the other stuff in our life that we are happy about. I think it's so powerful to understand that. And some may argue that the whole problem of society is that we think pleasure or joy is happiness, and we seek pleasure and joy all the time. But actually it's not the same. Pleasure goes away and joy goes away. Stay for a second. We habituate with those things. So some things are important to be understood about this approach. The first thing is that when you talk about societal change, a mainly approach is that bureaucracy or slow process or overly complicated things are not necessary. So I disagree with Max Weber's argument that we need to overly complicate in order to develop. Another important approach is that some of the arguments or statements that I will do today and we will make throughout life, or feelings that we will have, may be true for us, but it's not true for everyone. And for me, wisdom is the ability to hold two truths that seem opposite to each other. And finally, it's about the middle path. It's about understanding that we shouldn't go to the extremes in any way and trying to live a life that is well balanced. So first of all, let's talk about how the world is going right now. Actually, we are living the best time of our history. It's against a lot of our feelings nowadays. I feel that as a society, as a global society, overall, we have left out of the lower needs, as Maslow said in the last century, and we're going to the higher needs now. But unfortunately, we habituate very fast and very easy, and we don't realize all the changes that we have made. We are really bad on thinking about the past. Humans tend to think about the past as way better than it actually is, or way worse than it actually is. So that's why I believe so much in science and so much in looking to data. So some of data that Steven Pinker, one of the main psychologists and big professor in Harvard University, will say that people are living longer, healthier, we are wealthier, we are happier, there are fewer wars, societies are valuing more human life, has less wars. So those are really big improvements that we don't see every day. Extreme poverty is at its lowest with 9.6%. Global population is slowly going down in developed countries. So I think overall we are doing great. We are in the right direction. However, we are going very slow. Steven Pinker's argument is not that we are doing great and we can chill on the beach. It's about understanding what we are doing good and maximizing that and going faster. Some of the threats like climate change is very worrying and we need to work faster than we are doing. We are not doing enough. But the argument here is that to not look to the past and say, oh, it was better before, because then we give the opportunity to some people to get even elected, saying that we'll transform something as good as it was in the past. That's simply not true. First of all, it's not that easy to go back in time. And in the past was worse. Everything was worse. It's really important to understand the nature of news. News is about things that happen, not things that doesn't happen. And the front pages of all newspapers is about like, oh, the tornado that happened and the amount of people that it killed, not about all the technology that saved thousands of people that in the past 20 years ago it will kill way more people. Secondly, the nature of news is about we biologically are wired to see problems and to see threats throughout our life because we think on survival all the time. So whatever is something bad in the news, we pay more attention to it because we this might be threatening for my life and my existence in this planet. So it's important to realize that and to know how to deal with it. Steven Pinker's argument is that it's important that we know what is happening in Syria or all over the world, that the human rights agreement after the Second World War was very important, but it's about how to relate with those things. Okay, we know that something's happening in Syria. What are we going to do? Are we going to fly there? Are we going to donate for some NGO that we admire? Are you going to pressure our politics to do something different? Or are we just going to let this destroy our lives and our well-being and not help the people that are close to us? One of the arguments is that helping others really increase our happiness. So I believe that everyone, consciously or not, wants to be happier, and believe that everything they're doing, by the way they're sitting, the work that they choose to do, is because they believe that will increase more their happiness. And I wonder how much would be different if we realize that helping others will increase our happiness. That money, after a certain point, does not increase your happiness anymore, but helping others does. But staying time with your family, but exercising and eating healthier. A lot of my approach is the idea of trying to control what you can control. I was an athlete for a long time, and that's a phrase that Americans coach use a lot, and I always loved. Right? When you start to be worried about injuring yourself or something may happen, just control what you can control. And this comes to that quote that I always love, is that pain is part of life, but suffering is a choice. That's a lot of what I want to put as a seed for all of you, is about like how can we control the things that we can control and try to live a better life. I think this trend to improve life and to wanting to live with more purpose is going through business as well, because business is just big people. It's a lot of people there, so it's not their entity. Many times we talk about business as if it was something by itself. Oh, business is this way. No, business is just people taking decisions. And since the whole society is wanting more fulfilled, we already have the basic needs for most of people. We already still have 10% of people in extreme poverty. That's terrible, but for most history was more than 90%. We want more. We are not satisfied just with a job and paying bills. We want to be happy. We want to find a job that we really like it. And this is changing the way people are doing business and the way people, our millennials and some people that are having midlife crises, are consuming as well. We want to relate to brands in a different way. And that's changing many things. One is purpose. People want to have purpose. And I like to argue about the simplicity of purpose. I see a lot of youngsters struggling with purpose, thinking, I didn't find my purpose yet, I need to find it, I need to find it. And I always believe that purpose is about doing something, doing a work that you're not doing just for money. That in some way you believe that you are helping someone, maybe you're helping the people there, maybe you believe in the whole mission of the company. But it's not that complicated, and it's never going to be perfect. This whole idea that when you find the purpose, everything is going to be perfect and you're not going to stress in your life is just not real. Another important point is understanding the importance of cooperation. That cooperation is important and valuable as competition, but it's also about not demonizing competition, and having ambition and wanting to change the world is really important as well. There's a whole movement of conscious capitalism and seeing money as a consequence and not as the end goal. Not just working for the stockholders, but for all stakeholders. And the stockholders are one of them, but it's also the environment, the end user, all your employees. Those companies tend to have less hierarchy, and they're really focused on solving problems. That's the whole goal, and they believe in the employees. This creates way less bureaucracy, as we talked in the beginning. It's just better to work on those companies. You don't need, people are not doing, Paige is not doing because I'm obligating her to do it, but I believe she's gonna do it, and that's how it goes. When I was in Bhutan last semester, I went there just to research politics. They have received so many prizes of public policies for well-being, and I was really intrigued. And I want to understand what is that, and not just what is happening in Bhutan, but how can we transfer that to other countries? What other countries are doing, value the well-being of the population. Because for me, before that, as a simple person viewing politics, that was the norm, should be the norm, right? That people are there representing us to create a better society. So I discovered that there's 4 pillars that all governments that put the well-being of their population as the main goal of their government will do. 1 is safety and justice, 2nd is healthcare, and the 3rd is education. And also, if the government is thinking in the long run and not just trying to be reelected, he will also invest a lot in the environment and taking care of the environment. Because when we use the environment to improve our well-being now, we are putting the next generations, and sometimes not just just the next generation, but the next years, the next 5, 10, 20 years in jeopardy. I have always been passionate about education throughout my life. I had a really struggle in school and I suffered, but at the same time I love science and I love knowing and discussing about important topics, and I love being on stage and doing all those stuff. So I wonder what would change education. How can education be faster and really more problem solving and more focused on the things that the students need? So I found that 3 pillars are so important and essential to education. One is being holistic, also scientific and practical. Holistic because you need to take the student as a whole, not just something, not just look to this thing, but look to everything. You cannot take a pill for your headache that will destroy your stomach, right? So that's a lot of how our science have looked at things. The second is scientific, because otherwise the professor can just say whatever he or she thinks based on nothing and impose this to the students. And third, need to be practical. How many papers are we publishing in the scientific journals that no one reads because it's boring? And that's a lot of my work with happiness. I read those things and try to translate to people and write in a simple way in newspapers or even go to companies to talk about that, because I think it's so valuable and science can change people's life. But we don't talk about it and people just publish in some stuff that no one wants to read it. It's overly complicated and does not focus on how to use that. Some of the important class, I guess everyone knows, is like we need to talk with high schools about nutrition, personal finance, philosophy and sociology. We need to make people think by themselves to really understand and have their crisis earlier so that they don't have crisis later in life or that big of crisis, and emotional intelligence. So we talk about a lot of stuff, but in conclusion, the idea is that a good life can be simple. It doesn't need to be overly complicated and can be almost ordinary. I love to say that life is simple, may not be easy, but it is simple. And I think many times as humans, we overly complicate everything. I really believe that stress is optional. Not in the sense that you never feel stress, but it's about how you're dealing with that. About feeling stressed one day and deciding to call a friend and taking care of yourself and making those decisions and feeling that you are in control of how you're going to react. I think acceptance of who you are or who we are, it's very important. And accepting life circumstances. That shit happens all the time, and we need to accept that. Nihilism is not going to lead us nowhere. It's really bad. Being pessimistic all the time is not a good way to solving problems and to having a happier life. And it's about practicing each day and trying to be our best versions and giving a lot of hard work and being patient. Thanks.